Who's actually going to get the most bang out of a KICKER 48DCWR122 dual 12-inch ported enclosure paired with the 46CXA8001T mono amp and wiring kit? If you're wondering whether this combo is a solid step up for your daily driver, a waste of cash for a weekend cruiser, or just the right price for a first serious sub, you're not alone. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. The biggest hesitation I hear from buyers is the fear of ending up with a sub that looks great on paper but ends up either drowning the rest of the music or never really moving the cabin because it's not tuned right. That's why I spent a few evenings pulling apart the kit, watching a handful of install videos, and reading the few threads where owners talk about real-world use before I hit record. Let's start with the kind of car you'd actually fit this into. The 48DCWR122 is a sealed in MDF box, carpet-covered, and it houses two 12-inch comp R drivers. The enclosure is fairly large. Think a typical trunk-mount sub that takes up a good chunk of space behind the rear seat. If you drive a compact hatchback or a sedan with a tiny trunk, you'll probably have to sacrifice a lot of cargo room just to get it in there. On the other hand, a mid-size SUV, a wagon, or any vehicle where you can drop the box into a spare wheel well or a custom Subai will have no problem. So, the first rule of thumb, this kit is best for people who either have space to spare or are willing to do a bit of custom work to make room. Now, why does the enclosure matter? It's ported, which means it's designed to boost low-frequency output by using a vent tuned to a specific frequency. In practice, that translates to deeper, more resonant thumps that you feel in the seat rather than just hear. The dual driver layout also gives you more surface area to move air, so you'll notice a fuller bass response when you crank up a modern rock track or a bass-heavy hip-hop beat. The internal bracing is another practical point. It helps keep the MDF from flexing under the pressure of the drivers, which can otherwise cause a loose, rattly sound that most people mistake for poor performance. But a ported box is also a bit of a double-edged sword. Because the port is tuned to a particular range, you'll get that sweet spot, but you also risk a boom effect if you push the amp too hard or if the box isn't mounted securely. In the real world, that often means you need to bolt the enclosure to the vehicle's frame or use a sturdy rack, otherwise the vibrations can travel through the interior panels and make the whole cabin feel like it's shaking apart. For a casual driver who just wants a little extra thump for weekend road trips, that extra installation step can feel like overkill. If you're okay with a modest, non-port box that's easier to bolt in place, you might want to look elsewhere. The 46CXA8001T mono amplifier is where the power side of the equation lives. It's a single-channel amp, so it's designed to drive both subwoofers together from one source. The advantage here is simplicity. One wiring harness, one set of gain controls, and you don't have to worry about phase matching between two separate amps. The kit even includes a dedicated wiring harness that's pre-cut for the amp's inputs and the sub's outputs, which cuts down on the guesswork during installation. In my research, the most common complaint about mono amps is that they don't give you the flexibility to run a dual mono setup where each driver gets its own signal path. That's not a huge deal for most people. But if you're a hardcore audiophile who likes to fine-tune each cone independently, this could feel limiting. Power-wise, the amp is rated to handle the kind of RMS draw that the two 12-inch comp R drivers will demand in a typical street-legal setup. In plain terms, you can expect solid, consistent bass without the amp overheating on a 30-minute road trip playlist. The downside is that the amp's heatsink sits right against the back of the enclosure. Since the box is covered in carpet, you lose a little airflow compared to a vented metal box. In hot climates or during extended high-volume sessions, you might notice the amp getting warm, which isn't a deal-breaker but something to keep an eye on. Adding a small external vent or positioning the amp where it gets a little airflow from the vehicle's interior can mitigate that. One of the biggest practical strengths of this whole package is the everything you need in one box approach. You get the sub enclosure, the amp, and the wiring kit together, which is a rare convenience in the car audio market. Many people end up buying a sub and then scrambling to find a compatible amp, power wires, a ground strap, and a remote turn-on LED. With this KICKER bundle, you have a matching amp that's already tuned for the